The Israeli cabinet approved a plan to escalate the conflict and militarily occupy Gaza City. It was announced by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on social media. It immediately drew criticism in Israel and abroad. Mass street protests took place across Israel. The United Nations criticized the plan. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer labeled the decision wrong and called for restraint. China expressed serious concerns and added that Gaza is an inseparable part of Palestinian territory. In Gaza, some Palestinians wonder what is left to be occupied.
There's nothing left to occupy. We are already dying. Around 100 to 150 people die daily from starvation, on top of everything else we're going through. At this point, for the people, there's no difference anymore, whether he occupies it or not.
To talk about the situation in Gaza, we are joined now by Mustafa Bouti from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. He is founder and leader of the Palestinian National Initiative. Dr. Barghouti, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
So this plan was announced by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It apparently took place after a 10-hour security cabinet meeting. And during that meeting, there was opposition from military commanders to this plan. But still, Prime Minister Netanyahu overruled them, and this plan will go ahead. He also said that at some point Gaza will be taken over by some unspecified Arab group. Now, Israel has already killed tens of thousands of Palestinians, including more than 18,000 children. It's destroyed, demolished most of Gaza, and has subjugated the population. So what does this latest offensive mean?
Well, clearly, Israel is proceeding with its three war crimes at the same time. The war crime of genocide, the war crime of collective punishment, including starving people. But now they want to commit the third crime, which is the ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians in Gaza. Yes, people in Gaza are right when they say, what is he going to occupy? It's already occupied. But he means not just occupying Gaza, but pushing the 1 million people who are now in Gaza City down to the south, and pushing then the people who are in the middle camps and the remaining of Gaza also to the south. To where? To a concentration camp in the Rafah area, which is a very small area, and then force people out of Gaza. He will take them to a concentration camp that would be the most horrible concentration camp in human history, and then force people out through starvation, through killing them, through every kind of crime he could commit, because his goal really is ethnic cleansing of Gaza and annexation of Gaza, and then taking over the resources of Gaza, including the huge gas field, which is worth $56 billion.
The Prime Minister also talked about some unspecified Arab group that will take over running Gaza at the end of this offensive. Are you aware of any Arab group that will take responsibility for this?
No, I think this is another lie. I mean, this is another way for him to accommodate his plans and to make people, to actually hypnotize people about his plans, and claiming that there might be some kind of Arab rule, but there will be nobody to be ruling, because there will be no people to rule. His plan really is the ethnic cleansing. This is the real plan. And temporarily, he doesn't say I'm occupying Gaza, he's saying I'm taking control. Why? Because he knows an occupying power is responsible for the people they are occupying. And that's why he invented another idea, which is some kind of a civil authority. Of course, he doesn't want a Palestinian authority, and he doesn't want Hamas, and he doesn't want any of us as Palestinian groups. He wants to create, maybe he's dreaming about a group of collaborators that would serve his army and serve his occupation. That's the reality for it. But one has to be very clear. The ultimate goal, this is not about attacking Hamas. This is not about bringing back the Israeli captives. This is about ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, not only from Gaza, but eventually also from the West Bank. And that's why he has these Messianic ministers, fascists like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who openly speak about these plans.
And turning to the situation in the territory itself, we're now seeing more and more reports and some very graphic photographs, very distressing photographs of Palestinians dying from hunger and starvation, many of them children. At the same time, there are some countries that are airdropping food into the territory. And we understand that some of that food is being seized by gangs on the ground. What do you know of that situation in Gaza?
We have 80 medical teams working now in Gaza in the organization that I'm associated with. And they treat about 200,000 people every month. And they give us reports every day about what's happening. First of all, there is severe scarcity of all kinds of food. And that's why you see this terrible starvation. Already 202 people have died of starvation, including no less than 98 children. But the food supplies that get to Gaza, which is very scarce actually, because what Israel allows is between 50 and 70 trucks maybe, or 80 trucks, while Gaza needs 1,000 trucks of humanitarian supply every day. So what they allow is very little. The airdrops are about very small quantities, because all the airdrops that were used up till now maybe do not exceed 14 trucks. Imagine 14 trucks versus 1,000 trucks that are needed every day. But the worst thing is that these airdrops eventually hurt people. Many people were hit in the head. 2 people have died because of that, and more than 30 have been injured. If you talk about the trucks that enter Gaza, many of them are stolen by gangs that collaborate with the Israeli side. We have very clear reports that when the trucks arrive start to enter Gaza, the Israeli army informs their collaborators to cut the road and then steal the material. That's why almost 70% of the supplies don't get to the people who are in need for them.
There is also the group Doctors Without Borders, and they've just released a report in which they said that the distribution points in Gaza, these are the distribution points that were set up by this organization called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It said that those distribution points are, quote, sites of orchestrated killing. The staff from Doctors Without Borders have received massive influxes of casualties following shootings by Israelis at sites run by this foundation, which has also been described as a mercenary group established by Israel and the United States. I mean, what do you know of killings at these distribution points?
Originally, the most important organization that was providing humanitarian aid in Gaza, even before the war, is UNRWA, United Nations Relief and Work Agency, which was created to help Palestinian refugees, given the fact that 70% of the population of Gaza are originally refugees that were displaced by Israel back in 1948. So UNRWA was the most important organization, plus other United Nations organizations and Palestinian civil society groups. What Israel is doing is blocking the work of UNRWA and blocking the work of UN agencies. And then they've created with the Americans this group called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has nothing to do with humanity. They created 5 centers, and they claim that people could receive aid through these centers, but when people get there, they get shot at. And up till now, 1,520 people were killed while they were trying to get this humanitarian aid. And they were shot at not only by the Israeli army, but according to one of the people who worked with this foundation, they were also shot at and killed by the workers of these foundations who are armed and who shoot people whenever they want. 1,520 people were killed and about 7,000 people were injured while they were trying to get humanitarian aid near these centers, and many of them will end up with permanent disability. It's a horrifying story. People are starving, and that's why they go to these centers trying to get something, and while they try to get something, they are shot at and killed frequently and regularly. So that's why the humanitarian organizations call these Gaza foundations nothing but death traps for Palestinian people.
We see this horrific situation unfolding in Gaza right now, and of course this impending escalation that is planned by the Israelis. But there's been a very muted response, in fact, almost no response at all from Arab nations. Why is that?
That's true. I think and it is unfortunate. Israel would not have gone so far in their criminal attitude and in their crimes against the Palestinian people if it wasn't for three factors. First factor is the unconditional support from the administration of the United States, which includes everything, including sending them the bombs they are using, including giving them arms, including supporting them politically, including protecting Israel in the Security Council, including punishing the International Criminal Court when it accuses Israel of war crimes. Second, it's the silence of international community at large. The fact that no European country up till now imposed sanctions on Israel is by itself an indicator why Israel has been able to go that far in its crimes. But also it is the weak reaction, not only from Arab countries, but also from Muslim countries. And I think the 57 Arab and Muslim countries could have had a completely different attitude. But obviously, they are constantly calculating about the reaction of the United States and so on and so forth. But you are absolutely right. It is absolutely disappointing. And what we need is a much stronger reaction. We don't need statements of condemnations. That means nothing to Netanyahu. What can move him, what can force him to rethink is only when he starts to see sanctions, when he sees that those Arab countries that normalized relations with Israel, while it is committing these war crimes, are cutting off these acts of normalizations. And by the way, let me tell you, I am sure the vast majority, not vast majority, everybody in the Arab world, all the people of the Arab world, are with Palestinians, and all of them are angry about what's happening. And so many of them demonstrated and demanded, of course, changes. But unfortunately, there is still a very big gap between the government's positions and the people's positions.
Dr. Mustafa Bouti, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
For more on the Israeli decision to take over Gaza, we turn now to Gershon Baskin in Jerusalem. He is co-founder and co-director of the Alliance for Two States and advisor to Israeli, Palestinian and international prime ministers on the Middle East peace process. Gershon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You are a veteran hostage negotiator and a proponent for peace. We've just had this announcement by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on a military takeover of Gaza City and eventually the whole of Gaza. This is the Prime Minister speaking earlier on the United States cable news channel, Fox News. Let's listen.
Will Israel take control of all of Gaza?
We intend to, in order to assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. We want to hand it over to Arab forces.
So, Gershon, there we have the Prime Minister confirming that the plan is to take over the whole of Gaza. We just heard from the Palestinian leader, Mustafa Bouti, who says actually the plan here is to expel all Palestinians from the territory. It's a plan that has been widely condemned internationally and even by Israel's allies in the West. What is your response to this?
First of all, it's a plan which is not doable, which should not be done, which is illegal according to international law, which is against the national security interest of the state of Israel. And of course, war crimes have been committed in Gaza and will continue to be committed in Gaza. What we don't know is if this is an Israeli tactic to put pressure on Hamas to agree to end the war and make a deal to free the Israeli hostages at a lower price that they've demanded until now, or if this is actually an intent of the government of Israel to implement the plan. What we do know is that the chief of staff of the Israeli army and many of the other senior commanders of the Israeli army are not in favor of this plan. Now, they are subordinate to the government, and they have to carry out the government's orders, but they're the ones who are going to put down the tactical plans on what to do. And we can expect that there will be objection from the army for a lot of reasons. One, it will cost a lot of human lives, innocent Palestinians, non-combatants. It will endanger the Israeli hostages who will probably not survive this military attack against the rest of Gaza. And it will also cause the death of Israeli soldiers. Israeli army is spread very thin. They're exhausted. There are reservists who have done 300 and 400 days of reserve duty already. They can't do more. this weakens the Israeli army's ability to defend Israel on other fronts. So there are a whole lot of reasons why it shouldn't happen, why it may not happen. And the last is maybe the United States will put the brakes on. President Trump may actually tell Netanyahu, no, you can't do this.
There is also one other question which is being raised by Palestinians, and that is, what is left to be occupied in Gaza? The Israelis are already there.
Well, the Israelis control over Gaza. They've closed the borders all around, which they've done for many years. But there are 2 million people crammed in, 2 million Palestinians in Gaza crammed into about 3 different areas. Some of these areas Israel has not really attacked during the war because they believe that this is the place where Israeli hostages are being held. There are 50 Israeli hostages in Gaza. 20 of them are believed to be still alive, and Israel wants to retrieve them, or at least the government of Israel says that it wants to retrieve them. So it hasn't attacked those areas until now. Gaza is basically flattened, except for these 3 areas that they're now intending to go on. Now, I would say that there's a window of about 2 weeks before the military actually starts the action to implement the government decision. These 2 weeks are crucial now in terms of trying to get a negotiated ceasefire.
The Prime Minister also talked about some unspecified Arab group that will take over control of Gaza once this military offensive has taken place. He didn't say anything more about that, and we've not heard from any Arab countries about taking over there. And it's still unclear who would take over control in Gaza. In fact, the United States President, Donald Trump, has had a stake in this as well. This is what he said last February several times. Let's listen.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip.
And Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority. And with the United States being in control of that piece of land, the Palestinians, or the people that live now in Gaza, will be living beautifully in another location. They're all going to leave.
The president feels it would be much better and more majestic if these Palestinians could be moved to safer areas.
What do you make of those statements? I mean, is the United States going to get involved in Gaza?
First of all, with regard to Netanyahu's statements, there is no army or Arab country that will send any personnel to take over Gaza on the back of Israeli tanks. That's a non-starter. No country, no Arab country will do that. The only way that Arab security personnel will come to Gaza is if Israel is withdrawing from Gaza and they're invited by a Palestinian government, a legitimate Palestinian government. With regard to the American position of Trump presented as the Trump Riviera, my understanding from my talks with the Americans is that the idea has left the table. It's not there anymore. The Americans are talking about a deep American involvement in the reconstruction of Gaza, in providing an enormous amount of humanitarian aid. The idea of a population removal, of ethnic cleansing of the population from Gaza from the American point of view is no longer on their agenda. To the best of my knowledge, that's what I've heard from American officials.
And looking at the hostage situation in Gaza right now, there's been a great deal of disinformation, misinformation about negotiations for a hostage release. You know, as I pointed out earlier on, you're a veteran hostage negotiator. You've been involved in some of these negotiations. The Israeli government and its supporters blame Hamas for continuing to hold the hostages and say, look, this war could end if the hostages are released. To clarify the point, was there any point at which Hamas did offer to release all the hostages, the remaining hostages that they hold, as well as relinquish any claim to power in Gaza?
Well, the Hamas position for at least a year now has been that they are ready for a deal that would release all the hostages in exchange for ending the war and a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. The significant release of Palestinian prisoners, including all the prisoners who are serving life sentences for killing Israelis, and of course the entrance of an unlimited amount of humanitarian aid. The Israelis have rejected those proposals. The Israelis have talked about a temporary deal, a partial deal, a release of half the hostages. This is something that has complexed the situation, and Hamas doesn't understand why the Israelis only want a partial deal. The reason is because Netanyahu has a political interest to keep this war going. This is a political war from the point of view of the Israeli government today. It's not a strategic war. Israel's strategic goals were achieved at least a year ago. Hamas has no longer ability to control Gaza, to govern Gaza. They have admitted admitted that they are willing to transfer Gaza to a technocratic, legitimate Palestinian government that they will not be part of. There is a question of the Palestinian arms in Gaza, the arms of Hamas that they are not willing to surrender, but they are willing to enter into a long-term ceasefire and a non-aggression pact with Israel for a number of years, 5, 7, 10 years they've talked about. But they haven't said that they will surrender their arms, and this is a problem. The other problem in the negotiations is that the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, who is the legal international representative of the Palestinian people, has not declared who and what is going to govern Gaza in an interim period until they can hold elections. And this is a big void because it enables the Israelis and Netanyahu to say, if we leave Gaza, Hamas is there to fill the void. So President Abbas really needs to make a decision quickly and appoint someone to set up a council of Gazans that will govern Gaza when Hamas is no longer in control.
Recently, France, the United Kingdom, as well as Canada, announced that they will recognize a Palestinian state. Some other countries, Western countries, might follow suit as well. There could be a resolution that is passed by the General Assembly at the United Nations meeting that takes place in September. I mean, does any of this change anything?
No, not really. It doesn't change the lives of Palestinians. You can have 192 member states of the United Nations recognize the state of Israel, and as long as Israel doesn't, the occupation continues. But this is something that needs to happen because these countries have talked about a two-state solution for many years and have only recognized one of them. So if they want to be honest with themselves, if they want to be straight and direct and at least say where they want this conflict to go, it is the right thing to do to recognize the state of Palestine. And this is not a reward for Hamas or a reward for terrorism. It is a reward to the moderate Palestinians who want to live in peace with Israel, who want to live in an independent state next to the state of Israel, not in place of the state of Israel. And it is a reward to the international community itself, which is finally putting its money where its mouth is and standing up to Israel and saying there are two peoples living between the river and the sea. The Jewish people have a right to self-determination, and so do the Palestinian people have a right to self-determination in the land between the river and the sea.
Gershon Baskin, thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
To get the Israeli perspective, we're joined now by Dan Arbell here in Washington, D.C. He is scholar-in-residence at the Center for Israeli Studies at American University. Dan, great to see you. Dan, what is your view on this plan announced by Prime Minister Netanyahu for a military takeover of initially Gaza City and then the whole of Gaza? It's been characterized in various ways. We heard the Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid say that this is a disaster that will lead to more disasters. Others have described it as a full military occupation. And then there was Bezalel Smotrich, who is the finance minister, who said we are erasing the Palestinian state, first in action, then officially.
Hello, Anand. This is really an awful decision, a terrible decision, which I think which goes against the advice and the warnings of the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, and other senior level commanders of the IDF. I think it's mostly driven by political, personal considerations, and not only will it not achieve the results hoped for, but it's practically a death sentence to the hostages, the 20 live hostages still in the Gaza Strip, and to many more soldiers of the IDF that will be fighting in this war, and of course innocent Gazans who will be victims. And so I think it's all in all, I think it's very negative, and at the same time, this could be, if this is just for show and just tactics to get Hamas back to the table or to pressure Hamas, then it's one thing. But if Israel actually embarks on this road and actually goes to conquer Gaza City and the rest of the Gaza Strip, I think it's very bad news for Israel, for the region, for Israelis and Palestinians.
Right, and Dan, if this plan is implemented, how big a risk is it for Israel? Polling has repeatedly shown that the majority of Israelis favor an end to this war and in exchange for the release of the remaining hostages. And as you pointed out, even the Chief of Staff of the Israeli military has expressed his opposition to this. We understand that this meeting that took place with the Security Cabinet lasted 10 hours long, and there were some very heated exchanges between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the military commanders?
Yes, absolutely. You're right to suggest Israeli public opinion overwhelmingly supports an immediate end of war, an immediate release of the hostages, and just a withdrawal of IDF back to the perimeter along the Gaza Strip. And so certainly Netanyahu is going against the current, against the advice of the military, against Israeli public opinion, but he can do so because he won the elections. He has a very solid coalition, a 68-member coalition out of 120, which there's no way to bring him down in a democratic, legal way, and that's why he can go ahead and do that. And I think he wants to prolong the war as much as he can, because politically, once the war is over, it would be the end of his term, and certainly the end of his political career. But right now, prolonging the war is something that he feels that he needs to do. And on the way, he also caters to the demands of the far-right ministers like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who their vision, extremist vision, is to reoccupy Gaza and resettle Gaza. So I think really this is a recipe for disaster.
How are the hostages' families responding to this latest plan?
What they're going through is horrific, and they're very much disturbed by this. They're very angry. They're sad. They're frustrated, and they call on Israelis to come out to the streets and to protest. There's a movement now that's calling for civil disobedience, for general strike, for halting traffic on main roads, and so on and so forth. But they're kind of they really run out of things that they can actually do to help move this forward. They gave the government a chance, and there were negotiations up to 2 weeks ago that were very close, but then those talks didn't end in any, did not lead to any result, and so this leaves no negotiations at this point, and they're doing whatever they can to raise awareness, turn public opinion to be more proactive, and then also calling on world leaders, and especially the Trump administration, to pressure Netanyahu to make sure that to go back to the negotiating table to get to a deal as soon as possible.
Dan, as you point out, this decision is being driven more by politics in Israel rather than any military concerns or military contingencies that the country faces. The governing coalition that we were talking about is moving to fire the country's attorney general. This goes directly to what is happening in Gaza right now. The most senior legal official who's leading the prosecution of Netanyahu, that's the person whom they want to fire. The move has been blocked for now by a court. But what would it mean if the official is fired?
So again, you may recall the judicial coup that this government was trying to lead right after its election in January 2023, before the war even started. And they identified the Attorney General as kind of someone that's in their way of getting to that judicial coup across the finish line. Yeah. And they've been very much agitated by the fact that she is Attorney General Baharav Miara has been the protector of Israeli democracy. She's been, the ultimate gatekeeper guarding the system
right.
from becoming authoritarian or an illiberal democracy. So certainly this step is another testimony to the fact that Netanyahu will not stop at anything to get
right.
what he wants. And this is certainly a very worrying thing, but for now,
yeah.
the Supreme Court has issued an injunction, and hopefully they'll nullify this decision.
Okay, that's where we need to leave it. Dan Arbell, as always, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Anand. Have a good weekend.
You too. And we need to leave it there. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.